Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Surrendering your life to God's will. Life is filled with uncertainty, suffering, and complexity. We strive to impose order on chaos, to shape our futures according to our own desires, and to build structures that give us a sense of control. But there comes a point when we realize that our own efforts, our own reasoning, and our own strength are not enough. The burdens become too heavy, the path too unclear, and the suffering too overwhelming. It is in this moment that we are faced with a fundamental choice: cling to our illusions of control or surrender to something greater, something higher, something that transcends our limited understanding. Surrendering to God's will begins with humility, the ability to recognize that we are limited in our understanding, our strength, and our control over life. People often believe they must rely solely on their own intellect and abilities to navigate the world, but this mindset leads to frustration, anxiety, and ultimately despair. There will always be forces beyond our control, circumstances that shift unexpectedly, challenges that test our endurance, and suffering that seems unjustified. To think that we alone can master life's complexities is a form of arrogance, a refusal to acknowledge our dependence on something greater than ourselves. Humility is not self-degradation, it is the willingness to see the truth about ourselves. It is the realization that we do not have all the answers, that our vision is often clouded by ego, and that our choices, when made in isolation from divine wisdom, often lead to destruction rather than fulfillment. When a person embraces humility, they open themselves to guidance, allowing a greater wisdom to shape their path rather than being driven purely by their own flawed reasoning. This requires setting aside pride, which clings to the illusion of self-sufficiency, and instead embracing trust in God's greater design. True surrender is not a passive act, but a disciplined choice to yield to a higher order. It means recognizing that we are not the ultimate authority over our own lives, that we are subject to moral laws that transcend personal preference, and that our greatest potential is only realized when we submit ourselves to divine truth. Humility allows us to accept correction, to learn from suffering, and to trust that even when we do not understand the purpose behind our struggles, they are leading us toward growth, strength, and a deeper understanding of what it truly means to live in alignment with God's will. Letting go of control is one of the most difficult challenges a person can face because it requires trust in something beyond themselves. People are conditioned to believe that the more they plan, strategize, and exert their will over life, the more secure and predictable their future will be. But the reality is that control is largely an illusion. No matter how much effort one puts into shaping circumstances, unexpected challenges arise, relationships change, plans fall apart, and suffering comes in ways no one can anticipate. The more a person resists this truth, the more frustration and anxiety take hold, creating an internal battle that leads to exhaustion and despair. Releasing the need for control does not mean surrendering responsibility. It means recognizing the limits of human power and choosing to place faith in a wisdom greater than one's own. There is strength in admitting that not everything depends on personal effort alone, that outcomes are not always within reach, and that true peace is found in trusting divine guidance rather than forcing one's own way. This shift in mindset brings clarity, allowing a person to move forward with purpose rather than being paralyzed by fear. Courage is required to trust God fully because it demands stepping into the unknown without absolute certainty. The natural instinct is to hold tightly to personal desires, to resist any path that does not align with immediate understanding, and to believe that giving up control is the same as giving up agency. But in truth, trusting God leads to greater freedom, allowing a person to focus on what truly matters rather than being consumed by the impossible task of controlling every detail. It enables a shift from anxiety to faith, from resistance to acceptance, and from fear to a deeper sense of purpose that cannot be shaken by temporary struggles. Faithful surrender is not a passive state of existence. It demands discipline, sacrifice, and obedience to a higher moral order. Many people mistake surrender for inaction, believing that placing trust in God means stepping back from responsibility. But true surrender is an active choice, one that requires continuous effort, self-restraint, and a willingness to let go of personal desires in favor of something greater. It is not about seeking comfort or ease, but about committing to a path that is often more difficult, yet infinitely more meaningful. Discipline is necessary because surrender does not come naturally. The human mind resists letting go, clinging to pride and personal control. It takes daily practice to choose trust over fear, to embrace patience over impulsiveness, and to walk in faith rather than demand immediate answers. This discipline extends beyond thought into action. A life surrendered to God's will is one that prioritizes truth over convenience, integrity over self-interest, and service over selfish ambition. Each choice requires sacrifice, a willingness to set aside personal gain in pursuit of a deeper calling. Obedience is the ultimate test of surrender. It is easy to trust God when His plan aligns with personal desires, but the real challenge comes when His path leads in a direction that requires discomfort or loss. Faithful surrender means choosing to follow even when the road is unclear, even when it demands giving up something that feels essential, even when it contradicts personal plans. It is a recognition that obedience is not about blind submission, but about aligning with divine wisdom that sees beyond human limitations. When discipline, sacrifice, and obedience are embraced fully, surrender is no longer a burden. It becomes the source of true strength, allowing a person to live with clarity, conviction, and unwavering faith. Resistance to surrender is deeply rooted in fear. Human beings are wired to seek control, to create predictable structures, and to secure outcomes that align with their desires. Letting go feels like a risk because it requires stepping into the unknown, relinquishing personal plans, and trusting that something beyond immediate understanding is at work. The fear of losing control is ultimately the fear of vulnerability, the fear that things will not turn out as expected, that suffering will be too great, or that surrender will lead to disappointment rather than fulfillment. This fear often manifests as hesitation, as an internal struggle between self-reliance and faith. People cling to their own understanding, convinced that if they let go, they will fall into chaos. They hold on to resentment, believing that surrender means accepting injustice. They resist divine guidance because it may lead them down a path they would not have chosen for themselves. But this resistance only deepens the suffering. The more tightly one holds on to control, the more anxiety, frustration, and uncertainty take root. Surrender is frightening because it requires trust, but refusing to surrender is even more damaging. It leads to a life of relentless striving without peace. True freedom is found in surrender, but not in the way most people expect. It does not mean losing agency. It means aligning with a purpose greater than oneself. When a person stops resisting and places trust in God's wisdom, they are freed from the weight of unnecessary worry, from the endless need to manipulate outcomes, and from the exhausting pursuit of certainty. Surrendering does not erase challenges, but it allows a person to face them with resilience rather than fear, with faith rather than doubt, and with the knowledge that they are being led towards something far greater than they could have orchestrated alone. Living according to God's will brings a deeper sense of meaning, resilience, and fulfillment that cannot be found through personal ambition alone. Many people spend their lives chasing success, wealth, or recognition, believing that these achievements will bring them happiness. But time and time again, those who attain worldly success still find themselves feeling empty, as if something essential is missing. This is because true fulfillment does not come from external accomplishments alone. It comes from living a life rooted in purpose, in alignment with a truth that transcends personal desires and immediate gratification. Meaning is not something that can be manufactured. It is something that must be discovered. So when a person surrenders to God's will, they begin to see that their life is part of a greater design, one that extends beyond personal gain. Their struggles take on new significance. Their successes become less about self-glorification and more about service, and their failures no longer define them. Purpose is not about achieving a particular status or reaching a specific goal. It is about living each day in accordance with principles that are enduring and eternal. Resilience naturally follows a life of surrender. Those who trust in God's plan are not easily shaken by setbacks because they understand that difficulties serve a higher purpose. They are not paralyzed by failure, nor are they consumed by fear of the unknown. Instead, they move forward with confidence, knowing that they are being guided even when the path is unclear. This resilience brings peace, allowing a person to navigate challenges without becoming overwhelmed by them. When fulfillment is rooted in faith rather than fleeting success, life is no longer dictated by fear, insecurity, or comparison. It is driven by a conviction that every moment, every decision, and every hardship serves a greater purpose, leading toward a life that is truly meaningful. And thanks for watching.